Welcome to PLAC Podcast series on legislative and governance issues, funded by the European Union under the Support to Democratic Governance in Nigeria, EU SDGN 2 program. My name is Amarachi Onyaboy, your host, and joining me on this edition is Mr. Bukola Idowu. He is the Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, KDI. Our discussion will be centered on the 2023 general elections and the judiciary. Lessons learned so far. You are welcome, sir. Let's delve right into this conversation. How would you assess the performance of the judiciary in adjudicating over election petition matters arising from the 2023 general elections?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good to be here. I think looking at the judiciary and what they have done after the 2023 elections, and we have to categorize their performance into like about two or three. Number one is the administrative aspect of it that talks about how they were able to navigate the huge number of petitions around them. Then number two is the technical aspect, which have to talk about the quality of their decisions and their judgments, and then number three is again the public perception. So if you look at that, administratively they did well because they actually work under a very difficult condition, and by that I mean the total number of petition filed after the election was 1,209, and so which they have to dispense within 180 days. So that's put a lot of stress, a lot of strain on them, and which they eventually did, and then they dispense everything within that 180 days. Then 60 days for the appellate court. You find out that they also put themselves under a lot of strain to get that done. Don't forget that before the elections, one of the things you need to understand is that the judiciary has a lot of cases before them: human rights, criminal, civil, motions, and that. So all those stuff, they have to pause it and still give attention to the election issue. So when you look at it administratively, deploying over 300, in fact, to be specific, like 338 judges all across the country to look into that. They deploy like about 37 secretaries, a lot of support staff to the registries. So when you look at that, and also what we have also seen that is that when you look at the aspect of disbursement of fund, this time around it was a bit different because it looks like they got their fund on time and then they are able to do that. But when you now come into the aspect of the technical aspect in terms of the quality of the decision after the elections, well, why you will give kudos to them in one area, you have to knock judiciary in another area, because we've seen clearly a lot of conflicting judgments that has, you don't expect that we will be having conflicting judgments at this stage of our electoral cycle, at this stage of our election. This is the 2024, you're still having that kind of conflicting judgment. For instance, the Play 2 case is still fresh on people's mind, where you find that either erroneous or deliberate, but some people bear the brunt of I put it as a not well thought of judgments that have to send like a lot of people packing from a particular political party under the State House of Assembly, in the State House of Assembly packing, and meanwhile the Supreme Court judgment again was totally different from what was released at the appeal court. So you see that kind of conflicting judgment. The other one is that you also see that we begin to now have judgments that are so much based on technicalities, not on the substance of the matter. And by that I mean there are judgments that took people up to the appeal, to the appeal court and to the Supreme Court, depending on the cases. For instance, the presidency, the state governorship election that ended at the Supreme Court, but the legislative houses that ended at the appeal court. You find out that a lot of decisions were made even at that appellate level that has to do with technicalities, and we don't up to now, we don't even know if you have issues, we don't even know what the determination of the substantive matter will be. The last one I will say again is that in terms of relations, in terms of communicating with the public, I think the judiciary this time around, they did very poorly, because people I could not really understand some of the things they were doing that were actually new. Don't forget, this is the first time since 1999 that you have huge interest from citizens, young people in the judiciary, in what they are doing after the election. You find out that you have an hashtag trending, all eyes on judiciary. Young people, citizens just wanted to know what exactly is going on within the court. Unlike in the past election, after the election, people go to sleep, and then until Supreme Court begin to decide, and you just hear the judgment. So, but this time around, people were part of it from the beginning. You know, in fact, you have people in the online who just go to court, and they were giving step-by-step reports of what is happening at the court, or they just call the witness of this, and they were and that is to tell you that citizens were interested. Don't also forget, the citizens were also clamoring for live telecast of some of these, so it shows they were interested. But at the end of the day, the tribunal, the judiciary, were not communicating. For us and for me, I think in some areas they did well in handling the barrage of that. But when you now look at some areas that need improvement, and those are the areas that are very, very vital, and that is lasting in the mind of the people, as if, look, it's all about negativity.
Are there specific pronouncements or court judgments bordering on election administration or the legal framework for elections that you would like to highlight, and what are the implications of these pronouncements?
So let's take the presidential election for an example. One of the judgments says, look, whether INEC upload on IREF or not, that should not affect the integrity of the elections. So, and you find out that the Labour Party, PDP, that went to court on that basis to say, look, because INEC promised that they will upload on IREF, they promise they're going to transmit or transfer, whichever case, with the beavers to the IREF, and they made that promise, and at the same time is in the INEC guideline. And so they went to court because INEC could not do that, and the court said, look, that is not enough reason to invalidate that election. The implication here is this. Now, that kind of judgment has actually turned the IREF and the transmitting process of results from EC8A to the IREF, and the IREF itself has actually turned them to just like a paper tiger. So which means they were just there. They don't have legislative backing. They don't have legal backing. So what it means is that if tomorrow INEC decide to shut down IREF and say, look, we are not doing anything with IREF, nobody is going to query them, because what that judgment is saying is that it's not really known to them. You understand? Now, the second thing again is that don't forget this issue of transmitting with the beavers, the from EC8A and IREF was expressly stated, paragraph 35 of the INEC guideline. Now, what that judgment is saying is that the judgment did not recognize whatever INEC has put in its guideline. So far it's not in the Electoral Act, then the judgment did not recognize that. So, and again, of course, everybody should know that there are subsidiary laws now that we expect. So when you now find a situation where judgment did not recognize the subsidiary law, and just like, okay, because this is not in the electoral act, then that is you can't play on it, you can't have on it that they did not perform their constitutional right. So what it means is that whatever INEC is doing, and they are drawing the strength from the guideline, can be contested in court in future election. For instance, the margin of lead, and I give you an example. If the margin of lead is in the INEC guideline and it's not expressly stated in the Constitution or the Electoral Act, somebody can go to court and say, look, you can't use this margin of lead, though you have it in your guideline, but your guideline is as good as what? Because it's not, and there is precedence for that. So, and again, this has also put us in a difficult situation around election technology, because with that now, it's only recognized BVAS as an accredited device. Anything outside accreditation, the judgment is saying is irrelevant. BVAS is not meant for that. So what it means is that that has a potential impact on the future election. So we're going to approach, and I give you an example again. After that judgment, we've had 3 off-cycle election: Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo. Now, clearly, we saw in Imo State, like about 17 polling units that was written with the same handwriting. The result was written the same handwriting. We also see in some polling units cases where you see a lot of arithmetic errors in what was on IREF. Now, can you go to court now and say, look, this irregularity I am seeing here, what it means is that in fact, I can tell you again that when you tabulate for the 3 elections, when you tabulate the results for the 3 elections on what was put on IREF, they are not regular. They are not in tandem with what INEC declared. But however, if you have won on IREF and INEC declared another thing, you can't go to court and say, look, I tabulated this on IREF, because that does not give you, it doesn't have any legislative backing. So we have to now begin to look at how are we going to move some portion of this provision out of INEC guideline, and how do we make it into the Electoral Act so that we can have that legislative backing for it. And I think it's going to strengthen that our election going forward. In most of the judgment, let me just talk about the presidential, and most of the judgment, the judgment for presidential could not and did not at any point in time chastise INEC now for saying, look, you promise you are going to do it, though it's not in the Electoral Act, but why did you promise and you not deliver? And not talk about what you cannot do. Now the court, even from the court process, we did not even understand what exactly happened with the IRF. The statement that went out, technical glitch, that was what everybody knows. What happened to it, the court himself they were not even interested. Then the other one is that, okay, now you promise people you are going to do this, and then you couldn't do that. The court, no pronouncement from the court chastised INEC or reprove INEC and say, look, you did not do well. So again, what it means is that INEC can do anything they want and go scot-free. Now, so the issue here now is that, is there a synergy between the court and INEC? Don't forget, when people complain about that election, when people were complaining, then the chairman came out and said, go to court if you are not satisfied. People went to court, 1,209. Let me give you the statistic, 1,209. Only 103 out of 1,209 won their case. Only 103. Only 103 out of 1,209. So which also means it's difficult to prove your case, election case, in court and win. Absolutely difficult. So what it means is that we need the impact of the judgment, is going to be something that is going to be a bit negative on the election. Why did I say that? In closing, is that you have to see that when people discover that it's difficult to win at the courts, they want to win at all costs because they know it will be difficult to upturn it in the court. So it's either you have to win at all costs. For instance, again, let's look at another demarcation. You have the election was between the executive and the legislative houses. No upset, no every of the judgment favors the executive, the governors, the presidents. Now, those people, the 103 that won their case in court, that went to court, that won, are just from State House of Assembly to National Assembly. So, what are we trying to say? Are we trying to say it is only the legislative election that had issues, that the court can actually see that there are issues there? What happened? The same election. Don't forget, the State House of Assembly election and the governorship election was conducted the same day. The presidential election and the National Assembly was constructed the same day. The same day, the same polling officer, the same atmosphere, the same set of people, and yet most of the fault, irregularity, was seen at the legislative arm and all the executive. So we are playing with a keg of gunpowder, because in the next election, people will just, and that is what we saw in Kogi, pre-feed results. 7 a.m., polling officer is coming to the election and he saw, people are saying that the result had been feed. Now, what is going to happen? By all means, just declare. When we go to court, we will sort it out. At the end of the day, nothing will happen in court, because the mentality of the politicians that whatever the ballot cannot give you, the court will give you. And it's not going to be the best for our democracy.
With the elections over now and the judicial outcomes delivered, do you think there is a need for the reform of the Electoral Act? If yes, in what specific areas do you think priority attention should be given?
We need to reform the Electoral Act. We really need reforms. So number one, I already said that, look, that portion in the INEC guideline that explicitly stated or states the role of BVAS and the role of IREF. I think there have to be an amendment to move it, shift it from there to the Electoral Act. That is number one. Number two, reform and conversation we should be having is that the burden of proof. Now, people keep saying, and for some of us who are just citizens who follow the process, we couldn't understand it. Lawyers keep saying it. Now, but we know the burden of proof rests on the petitioner. At the same time, we know that election adjudication is sui generis. It's on a class of its own. So why are we using criminal law to prosecute a civil right if it is actually a class of its own? So should we begin I think it is time we begin to talk about the burden of proof should be swinging between the petitioner and INEC, because what it means is that INEC conduct an election and INEC cannot come to defend the election you conducted. You said the person that alleged alone should prove that the election. Now, how do I prove that the election? How do I prove successfully that the election was not conducted in accordance with the law when it is the same INEC that I have put as a respondent who doesn't have a burden of proof? Is the same person that will give me the CTC copy of what I need to prove against them. Does that make sense? It doesn't. Now, the law says you have to join INEC. So you join INEC as a respondent. I am the petitioner, and I am at the mercy of the respondent to give me CTC. So you look at the case of Rivers, they couldn't even get CTC before they went into the trial, and that was the technicality that went up into the Supreme Court, where you can the judgment will begin to say, oh, I mean, you could not successfully prove your case. So we need to begin to now look at this issue of burden of proof, or probably the burden of proof should rest on INEC, and then the evidential burden proof should be, burden of proof should rest on the petitioner, the evidential should rest on INEC and come and prove. Now, let me paint another picture for us where we may need reform. So number one, I talk about moving some section from the INEC guideline into the Electoral Act. Number two, we should look at the aspect of the burden of proof and then see if they can swing. Number three, we should look into the issue of the status of INEC at the tribunal. Who should be sued on election issues? So, and this is my point. You ran for an election. I ran for an election. INEC conducted the election. You run for an election. I also ran for an election, and INEC conducted the election. And I am going to court, and I am suing. You are suing me, a participant. So you have to look at it. Am I also a participant? I did not control the high ref. I did not control anything. I'm also a participant, and that has been a conversation. So probably we should also look into that. And quickly, let me just mention two more. Is the aspect of in terms of cases. Number of cases we have, and in terms of the days. I tell you, with what we have now, 338 judges left their role as judges pending for 180 days, approximately 6 months. Their cases were not reassigned. In fact, majority, 90% of the cases were not reassigned to another judge. They were pending until they will come back. So, because of election, you have criminal cases, civil cases, motion, and a whole lot of things pending because the man has gone on election duty. The way we are dragging the judiciary into the political arena could actually harm and affect that institution, the judiciary. So we now begin to think. Now, what do we do? Number one, and again, it is only the governorship election that have 3 layers. Do we need that? 1 year, just February, this month, or the last case, Kaduna case, was determined by the Supreme Court. This is, of course, this month make it 1 year that we had an election. So judgment were being delivered 1 year after. So the judiciary were busy for 1 year. So, and only the governorship have 3 layers. Start at the tribunal. Now, after the tribunal, move to the appeal court, from appeal court to Supreme Court. Presidency did not start from tribunal. It started from the Court of Appeal, which serve as the tribunal, and then to Supreme Court. Then all the legislative houses start at the tribunal and terminated at the Court of Appeal. What is so special with the governorship that have 3 layers? So it made us 1 year. So 1 year of distraction for judiciary, 1 year of governance distraction for the for the governorship. So what should we be looking at? What conversation should we be talking about? Should we shorten the whole process so that they can also have time for governance, one, and then judiciary will not have a lot of their cases suffered. I can tell you from good authority that if any case you take today to the Supreme Court, the likely date you are going to have is 2027. Because a lot of cases have been abandoned because they have to face election. 2027, lawyers are getting date for 2027. At the Supreme Court. So this is the reality. Is this sustainable? So maybe we should have to reform that. Look, we need to now begin to talk about electoral court or constitutional court, where they will just handle election matter by that. It saves us time. It saves us, it helps the expertise of the judges, because what you are doing, people need to also understand that. Have you noticed that most of the cases at the industrial courts are hardly overturned because the people have developed expertise over the years? We also need lawyers. We also need judges who will develop expertise on election matter, and this is not new. You have electoral courts in various countries. You have it even in Africa. South Africa is there. Then again, what model should we begin to look at? Presidential cases within 14 days are determined in Kenya. Ours is taking close to 1 year, 180 days plus 60 days. These are the issues, and we can do it. And then we should also have a conversation. Should we do away with the Court of Appeal for presidential issue, just like you have it in Kenya, and then just go straight to the Supreme Court and determine it, and then everybody goes on, and then the winners go back and sit with governance? The last thing I will say again is the role of the judges. We need to now begin to have serious conversation around that. And what do I mean? Is this: should the judges be declaring the winner, or the winner should be coming from the ballot? We've seen categorically where judges became mathematicians and then begin to deduct vote and hard vote. Should that be the case? We need to define the parameter at which the judges can go. Can they just go and order rerun and let the legitimacy come from INEC, like what you have in Kenya? They just order rerun. Now, can you just go and order? They can't. But it has impact on voter turnout when people vote. And I give you the case of Imo, like about 500,000 to 600,000 people came out to vote in the election. At the end of the day, 5 people after 1 year will determine who the winner is. It's at the Supreme Court. It's not really done. So we need to define the parameter at which the judges can go. Should we just be ordering recount? Should we just be saying, I may go back and reconduct? And just like that, and then just affirm. But to not say, look, this one, when we deduct this, we deduct this. Judges should not sit in courtroom and turn to mathematician and be declaring the winner, because at the end of the day, it affects the turnout. People will say, well, why do I need to go and vote when some people will eventually go and declare the winner? And if you continue through that trajectory, if whoever holds the judiciary, whoever is able to have the judiciary in his pocket, will always become the governor, because they will declare, and that will be the end. So we need serious reform in most of these areas.
Now, in closing, what suggestions do you have for 1, the citizens, 2, the election management body, that would be INEC, civil society organizations, and then lastly, the courts?
Well, I think on the part of INEC, the INEC should not just begin to shift the responsibility of credible election and affirming the credibility of an election to courts. And I don't think that is right. You can't just say, oh, I have conducted the election. If you are not satisfied, go to court. And then, so what you are trying to do is that the burden of good or bad election, you shift it to the judiciary. So what it means is that you are not taking responsibility for what you have done, you just shift it to the judiciary. And judiciary have been caught in that trap over the years. So now, at some point, nobody is saying that, oh, INEC did not conduct a credible election. They now begin to say, oh, the judges, the judiciary cheated us. So, and that is not the true picture. It is it is the garbage in and is garbage out. So what it means is that we need INEC, we need to make sure that INEC begin to conduct credible election. Now, if you can conduct credible election, then the legitimacy will come from the people, not from the courtroom. So the polling unit is where legitimacy comes from, not from the courtroom. And that is just for me. The court can just and can look at the whole process and affirm. But now the court should not be declaring the legitimacy or declaring the winner. Then civil society, we need to do more in terms of our sensitization, in terms of we've had a lot of judicial illiteracy. I mean, permit me to use that word. People don't understand the process of the court, and it's fueling a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. And like I said, if care is not taken, if you don't educate the people, people will now think that, look, where the battleground is in the courtroom. And in the next election, if some of these are not addressed, you now begin to see citizens besieging the courtroom and desecrating the place because they feel that, look, something might happen there that will affect our legitimacy. So we need a lot of sensitization. Like I said, judiciary, we should not assume they know a lot of things. They need support. So most civil society have focused their attention on INEC and say, hey, let's support INEC. You support INEC in voter registration. You support INEC in civic education, voter education. You support INEC in the area of security, logistics, and a whole lot of support we have given INEC. And I think we also need to shift our attention to judiciary and see how we can actually help them in that regard. Then again, the last one I'm going to say is that, look, we need expertise in cases of judicial. It has gone beyond and all over the world. We have specialty in that area, people that specialize in electoral adjudication, and we need to develop that specialty within the judiciary. Maybe NJI, the Nigeria Judicial Institute, should now begin to develop judges in that area, so where we have people who have that expertise. So we should not be talking now election is over, judges go back to their regular cases, and then when the election comes, then we remember that some people are, you remember that, okay, please quickly do crash course on electoral act and go and sit on election matter. No, I think we need to now begin to develop expertise in that particular area. And for citizens, we cannot give up on institutions, and that is going to be dangerous. We cannot give up on institutions, we cannot give up on INEC, we cannot give up on the judiciary, even the political party. So we need, in fact, it is our role, it's our responsibility to begin to follow them, to begin to give them what I call close marking and see that they do the right thing. And with that, we can have a good and a better society.
This has been indeed an interesting, in-depth, and very insightful conversation. Thank you for coming on the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
This podcast edition is funded by the European Union under the Support to Democratic Governance in Nigeria EU SDGN2 program. Thank you for listening. Subscribe and stay up to date with upcoming episodes. Follow PLAC on all our social media platforms at PLAC NG. Thank you.